Hello, and welcome to this episode of Gimme Shelter Security in Azure. Today we're going to talk about storage security, protection, and lifecycle management. My name is Dwayne Natwick. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer and regional lead, as well as a cloud training architect lead for Ops Agility. I am a Microsoft Azure MVP with multiple certifications in both Azure and Microsoft 365. And you can find me on the social media links provided on this slide. So our topics on today's episode, we're going to talk about storage security, shared access signatures, encryption and protection, as well as lifecycle management in our storage accounts. The key thing to think about when we're talking about storage security is data sovereignty. Where are we? Where is our information, and how is it being governed? We need to provide, the physical isolation depending on regions, where that information is being replicated, how that is, how that could possibly be recovered, how it's being updated, as well as the data, like I said, the data residency. Is there a particular jurisdiction and sovereign requirement in terms of where our data lies and where our data goes outside of that particular region or country. And those are all things we need to think about as we're building our storage environment and where we're securing and storing data. So we need to continue to think about these things as we build our storage infrastructure, both from specific storage accounts as well as our databases and where information is being paired and where information is being used. So we need to think about all of those different things. And then we need to think about the different access to our storage accounts. And this is specific to the different storage accounts where we're looking at both blob container type storage as well as Azure Files, and what is supported in terms of authorization and access to those storage accounts. You can see on this slide that there are multiple ways that we can build access to security accounts depending on how we're utilizing that. And we can see, in terms of Azure blobs or Azure or containers within Azure storage accounts, they're supported for both, storage account shared keys, shared access signatures, Azure Active Directory, as well as you can have anonymous public read access, which is, if you turn that on, you're going to get one of those yellow alert triangles, but it is supported. And I usually say that probably the biggest use case for that is you're feeding images for your website from a storage account blob, and those can be anonymous. But you have those specific those images that are public access and anonymous read access on its own storage account. Don't mix that with financial information, spreadsheets, and things like that. Have it properly segmented, and again, that goes into that data sovereignty of where that data is held, what accounts they're on, where what regions they're in, how they're replicated and paired, and all of those things. But that's a good best practice to think of when we're thinking about anonymous public read. It's going to be very few use cases where we're going to want to do that. We're going to want to use either our Azure Active Directory for users within our organization, or guest users with Azure Active Directory guest access to be able to access that information, or we're going to utilize shared access signatures, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a little bit more in detail here, for our access to data within a storage account. And that would be mainly to provide just a temporary access that expires and therefore limits our attack surface for our organization. Storage account shared keys, every storage account's given 2 keys that we can then rotate. Again, if we go back to the last episode where I was talking about key management and Azure Key Vault, we most likely don't want to expose these keys as a best practice within our organization. We want to utilize Azure Key Vault, Azure, or utilize Azure Active Directory for access to resources within our environment. The same thing with Azure Files. Azure Files doesn't have shared access signatures. Azure Files works very much like a shared file server within your organization. You can set Azure Files up utilizing that SMB protocol for access, and again, utilizing Azure Active Directory. We can utilize it only with Azure AD domain services, though. It doesn't work directly with Azure Active Directory. You have to have a hybrid type build in terms of that environment, as well as it's in preview with Active Directory. When we're looking at utilizing Azure Files with a REST API, we're going to utilize shared access signatures as well as shared keys or a key from our key vault. So let's talk a little bit more about shared access signatures, which is a very key way and very important way to utilize and to share information on our storage accounts, on our storage, our access to our containers and our blobs or particular files. And we can do them from an account standpoint or a service standpoint, but it grants that access to that information on a very defined basis, and you define what those permissions are, whether they have read or whether they have write. It's very similar to how you would maybe grant somebody a file access within Windows Explorer in terms of your types of permissions and everything. But here we can then also set start dates and end dates to that signature key or that signature URI that we're giving to whoever needs access to it, and then it's going to expire after a certain amount of time. We can also specify a specific allowed IP address. So if you were exposing a balance sheet on a monthly basis to your accountant for a week to close your books for the month, you're usually utilizing a third-party accountant that's not on your network and doesn't have guest access to your network, you can specify their IP address that they're going to be accessing it from, so their home IP address, and then require it to expire after a week. Started on a certain date, the last week of the month, and have it expire 2 days after the next month starts or whatever. We'll talk about that and look at how we can set that up here in a moment. The authentication and looking at how it's going to authenticate. You have different capabilities within authentication, utilizing the kind of the workflow of it all is there's some built-in roles in terms of how the secure how you would create role-based access control within the storage account with a storage blob data contributor. Then there's the storage blob data reader. So you can assign specific roles to users and within your organization to give them access to create storage accounts, to work with the data within the storage accounts, as well as read that data within the storage account. So you can, and then that role-based access control can be utilized for how they're authenticating and how they're utilizing, how they're accessing that information as well. And then from a storage account, a storage service encryption. Storage service encryption is turned on by default within all storage accounts within the Azure environment. But you can determine how that encryption is working. And we talked about the storage service level keys when we were talking about the different ways to access storage accounts. Well, you can utilize that as well, from a Microsoft managed key standpoint, or you can set it for customer managed keys, and that's where Key Vault can come into play, or utilizing a third-party HSM that we talked about in the last episode. So welcome you to go back and listen to the key management episode to understand a little bit more how Microsoft managed keys and customer managed keys work. But you have that capability to turn that on within storage service encryption as well. And then we can also then set up retention policies and look at different retention policies within our data environment, and set up time-based retention, and this is where we get into data lifecycle management within our organization as well, where we can put those in place for accounting reasons or legal hold reasons to put those in place to hold that information, maybe in an archive to save costs of our storage account, and have those available if somebody needs to access those at a later date. And when we're authenticating and looking at how we're going to utilize our role-based access control or Azure Active Directory domain services for accessing files, you can see this is a four-step process where we're utilizing, we're authenticating with our Active Directory credentials. We're accessing those files. We're returning, utilizing Kerberos within here to return that authentication to be able to then access those files within our Azure files. This workflow is very similar to how a workflow would work if we're utilizing a file server on our on-premises data center for our organization. We're going to go in, we're going to present our credentials to access those files, and it's going to all go through Azure Active Directory domain services, and utilizing a Kerberos authentication token to provide that authentication and provide that verification of our identity and our requirements for access. One of the best practices as we finish up the slides here before we get into our demo is looking at and understanding the difference in terms of what we want to do in terms of enabling secure transfer. And this again goes into best practices on whether we want to need our data to be encrypted in transit or not. Again, when we talk about anonymous access to blobs, do we want to allow images, have our images on our website encrypted? We might not need that, but any data that we're presenting on our website, we probably do. So we want to make sure that we have secure transfer enabled within our storage accounts and have that configured properly. And that is going to then require us to utilize HTTPS rather than HTTP to access our files. So a key piece to identify there. So let's go into and look at a couple demos within the environment here as we go through and look at a storage account. So we're in our Azure account now, and we are going to now let's look at our storage account. So I'm just going to go and click on storage, and I have a storage account here, and we can look at here in terms of our containers. And let's first look at, I've got my logs in here. If I go in and look at my file shares, I don't have any files right now. But if I were to, so let me create a quick container here of images, and let's quickly just upload a file here within my images. We'll upload an image. So right there, I've got an image in here. You can see that that it's available. It's in my hot access tier. I can do different things here. So right in here, right off the bat, I can generate my shared access signature. So if I want to give access to this particular background, and if I go back here real quick, I should not have access to this. So if I go and look here and copy this to my clipboard and then try and paste this here, I don't have access to that file. So I want to give somebody access to this file. So let me go back here and create a shared access signature. I'll use my key. I'll give read permissions. Let me make this here a few minutes in the past. I'll just leave that there. I won't make it specific to IP. Here again, making it secure transfer required. So I'm going to put it in HTTPS, and I'll generate my SAS token. And here now I have my SAS URL. So if I copy this to the clipboard now, and go here and paste and go, my image now comes up. So now I have access to that image. I have access to it until 3:37 today, and then nobody will have access to it after that. It will then go to zero access. Nobody can then see it. If we wanted to, though, make this anonymous, we could change the properties here in terms of changing our level of access. It's set a private. I can set that blob to anonymous read access if I wanted to here as well. So that's really the baseline of the shared access signature. As we look at our shared access signature, if I go back here, we can look here and break it down that here's my storage account name, and then we have blob core windows.net. If it was a file, it would be files. If it was a queue, it would be queue. If it was a table, it would be table here. So pretty easy to remember naming convention there. Here's my container name of images. Here's the name of my file. And then we can see in here where my start and end times are, here, from a standpoint of what I have in terms of what's in here. We can see that I've given only read access to it. It's got my signature key here, but we can see we have, we've given read access to this key. We have a time in here of my end time. We have my start time here. So we have all of that information right within the environment, and we can read and look at what that information is. Get an idea of, again, here's my permissions of read access, and we can review and know, just looking at breaking down this particular signature, when it might expire, and how I have it set up. And that's a very important thing to understand when you're going through and you're taking maybe a Microsoft exam, and it presents you with a shared access signature and asks you when that's going to, what the access permission level is within it. If this was read write, it would say RW, and you can review those and understand those from that standpoint. So it's very structured in terms of how that shared access signature works. The last thing I want to show in terms of these storage accounts is the lifecycle management. So you can go in, and if we go down to our blob and we look at lifecycle management here, this is where we can set out specific controls, and we can add specific rules in here based on, say, for accounting, say, and we've set it up for our blobs. We're going to apply the rule to the storage account, and here we can say, based on last modified, we are going to, move to cool storage. For if it's 30 days, we'll move to cool storage. We can add another if-then block that if last modified is more than 90 days, we move to archive storage. And then if last modified is, here we have to do a little bit of math. Let me just do for a year, but typical accounting procedures are, you hold things for 7 days, or for 7 years, and we can then after that delete that blob. So we can do different things within here to manage our life cycle and manage our costs as well as our legal requirements in terms of holding on to information as well within our storage account. So lots of different things that we can do here and maintain and manage within our organization to control costs as well as adhere to regulatory standards. So those are the main two things I wanted to kind of cover in terms of storage accounts today in this quick episode. So I want to thank everybody for attending today. You can reach out to me on social media and let me know what you think. Subscribe to the Captain Hyperscaler YouTube channel for alerts and updates on these particular videos. And thank you very much for attending today, and enjoy the rest of your day.